My name is Rory Wilmer. I'm 58 years old. I was born in Bedford, England in 1951. I had a happy childhood and enjoyed going to school until I was 14 years old, when I was befriended, groomed and then sexually abused for the next 2 years by a man called Hugh Madley, one of my teachers at a Catholic boarding school in Surrey. The abuse began towards the end of 1966, shortly after Madley had joined the school to teach chemistry, and went on until February 1968, until, despite all the many threats he made to me in his attempts to keep me silent, I could no longer cope with what he was doing to me, and I finally told my housemaster, a priest, during confession, hoping that he would help me escape from my torment. But that is not what happened. After I had made my confession, he coerced me into repeating what I had just disclosed to him, but this time outside of the confessional, so he would not be constrained by the seal of confession, which forbids a Catholic priest from disclosing what he has heard during confession. He then told my headmaster, another priest, who in turn told the provincial, the head of the Catholic order which ran the school at the time. The provincial came to my school the following day and interviewed me on my own, asking me all sorts of prurient questions about my sexual thoughts and development. At the end of the interview, he swore me to silence, telling me that I must not tell anyone else, especially not my parents, about what had happened. Many years later, I discovered that the provincial had also been abusing children, as indeed had the priest I first confessed my troubles to. Shortly afterwards, Madley was transferred to another school in London, also run by the same Catholic order, but no one was told why. I was left to fend for myself without any support from the school, but the sexual and emotional abuse I had suffered, coupled with the school's failure to protect me when I sought their help, resulted in the onset of psychological problems, which fundamentally damaged my development as an individual, leading me into a spiral of decline that manifested itself in a range of harmful behaviours, including alcohol and drug abuse, self-harm, and sex addiction. These were so-called coping strategies, but they would blight me for years to come. The abuse also put an end to my education, as I failed all of my GCE O-level exams in the July of 1968, having been an above-average student in the years before the abuse began. The headmaster, who of course knew what had happened to me, told me that I was not welcome back in the school, as if it was somehow all my fault, and so ended my otherwise promising education. Being tall, strong and intelligent, it was not difficult to get manual work. My first job was as a porter in a local hospital in Surrey, the first of many manual, low-paid jobs I had. But I found it difficult to settle in any of them for very long, always running away when things challenged me. It was also hard to form lasting relationships, emotion being something I found very hard to share. I tried to pretend that it had never happened by burying the memories deep in my mind, and for the next 30 years or so I stumbled on through life, wearing a variation of masks, but the legacy of guilt, confusion and anger was never far from the surface. Then, about 12 years ago in 1995, the hidden memories began to re-emerge, a trickle at first, then more and more, each time becoming sharper in focus and more detailed. They pervaded my mind during the day and haunted my dreams at night. At the beginning of 1997, I began to break down, no longer able to cope with the distress caused by these awful intrusive memories and the nightmares, which totally overwhelmed me and took me to the brink of self-destruction. I was diagnosed as suffering from a chronic post-traumatic stress disorder with an underlying depressive illness, but there was very little in the way of effective treatment on offer from the NHS at the time, apart of course from antidepressants. I knew that I needed to fully understand what had happened to me and why it had impacted on me the way it had done. I also knew that I needed to find a way to get some sort of closure on the torment I was going through, not just for me, but for my family, who had been so supportive during my breakdown. Finding the right kind of help, though, was not easy, as there was no central place to go for support or even to get advice. So I began to research everything I could find out about the impact of childhood sexual abuse, using libraries and the internet. Once I had collected enough material, I created a website which I called Victims No Longer, and put all of the information onto it, along with a forum. It was not long before hundreds of other victims began to contact me, asking for help. Such was the demand that in February 2003, together with another survivor I had met, David Williams, we set up the Lantern Project and began publishing self-help survival guides based on the massive information we had gathered. We also started offering peer support counselling at a facility we established in New Brighton on the Wirral Peninsula. Since then, the project has grown rapidly in terms of the numbers of people we see and support. Currently, we have some 800 registered members who use our forum, and we counsel around 500 others, either at our facility in New Brighton or through our prison outreach project. I have also written 2 books about what happened to me and how I learnt to cope. The first, called Survivor, was published under my pen name Peter Andrews in 2004. My second, which is called Conspiracy of Faith, is written under my own name and tells the story of how I tracked down my abuser and brought him before the courts. It was published in February 2007 by Lutterworth Press. In 2008 I wrote Picking Up the Pieces, a comprehensive survival guide for victims of childhood sexual abuse, which includes all of the important information I have discovered over the past 10 years. Much of it is based upon the brave disclosures of other victims I have met along my journey of recovery. This book has proved itself to be of real help to victims and professionals alike. So the purpose of this collection of short films is to share that information with you, to help you gain a better understanding of child abuse and how it affects people, both the victims and those who care for them, and how to build a lasting recovery from all that you have been through. Thank you.